Hi, welcome to the Ski Instructor Podcast. My name's Dave Burrows from Snowdome Ski School. I'm a ski instructor based here in the Port du Soleil in Switzerland. This week I chat to Scott Pleva, and Scott is the owner of Inside Out Skiing. And I've been looking forward to speaking to Scott for a while because Scott has quite a different model compared to some of the other ski instructors that we've spoken to so far. So Scott works year-round in an indoor snowdome in the UK, and he also then takes his clients away on European trips with him. So we touch on that a little bit. Certainly, in this first half, we're talking about indoors versus outdoors, different teaching styles. You know how one goes about teaching in such a different environment to the one that most of us, I would say, are used to. So enjoy the first half. I really enjoyed this chat with Scott, and it was great to catch up with him. I haven't seen him for a year or two. So enjoy this, and I'll catch you halfway through. All right, so Scott Pleva from Inside Out Skiing. How are you? Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Dave. Yeah, I'm really well.
Good. Now you're sitting at home in you'll have to fill me in on
Essex.
That.
Yeah, in Essex,
in Essex,
in the UK.
But that isn't an Essex accent, is it?
No. It's 29 years in Essex for me, but originally I'm from Milwaukee in Wisconsin, the upper Midwest, and lived a long time in Texas. So.
Okay. And where? And so what? Initially, well, let's go into that. Let's start with that. So you were born and brought up there? You were sort of skiing there as a youngster, or?
No, absolutely not. It's pretty flat there, so I didn't actually start skiing until I moved over to Europe.
Okay.
I moved over here about when I was 28 and got started in my 30s, and had my first lesson at 41, and decided I liked it, and did my first basic course at 44. So kind of a late starter.
Wow, that's amazing. Okay, because that to me. Well, we might as well just this podcast is all about tangents, so let's jump straight into that one, because I've been saying to anyone that will listen for as long as possible, and I say it, this isn't, I'm not talking behind anyone's back. This is what I say to the Swiss guys, and say to them, or the guys that are brought up on skis, these locals who are have been skiing since they were 2. That's the thing that they do here in Switzerland. You're on skis by 2, and the thing about that is that if you've skied your whole life, you have no appreciation whatsoever about what it's like to be rubbish.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, being an adult learner, is something that's very new.
Yeah.
I mean, I just funny enough, last week I was in Intertux doing a level 1 telemark course, and that was quite an experience in some heavy weather. And,
yeah.
You go back to beginning and falling over a lot and broke a pair of skis, and had a lot of fun. So.
Oh, really? It's and that's, I think it's the bit that follows on from that, Scott, is that what I was thinking is that if you've got an adult learner in front of you, how can you, if you don't know what it's like to be rubbish, and you've skied your whole life and it's kind of second nature to you, how can you empathise with the person that is really struggling, to put pressure on one foot or to steer a foot this way or the other way? I'm convinced that that's what makes a lot of the kind of, I know a lot of instructors who have learnt later on, and their empathy is higher in that respect.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you can definitely relate more to somebody, and I mean, I think also if you've played other sports, I think that can help quite a bit. I mean, I played volleyball as my sport when I was younger, and did some coaching in that. I coached women's volleyball, and then transferring the coaching over to another sport, I think, gives you a different perspective as opposed to just being naturally good. You've always been a good skier, as you say. I've skied since I was 2, and how do I ski bumps? So I don't know. I just go and do it. So it's a different teaching method or model than someone that's just learned as a youngster.
No, I think it's okay. The volleyball aspect makes sense now, because for those of you who haven't met Scott, Scott's really, really tall.
Which doesn't help my skiing that much, trust me.
Well, maybe we'll get on later to big guy problems, because I think that's a genuine thing. It's very hard to look dynamic as a big guy. And I think even you see that actually on the World Cup when you look at what's your man called, Raymond Zenenhauser. He's like 6'9" or something, racing slalom.
Yeah, and it just looks crazy. Yeah,
he's fast. And, he doesn't have to get his legs so far away from him because obviously he's got a very long body, but he never looks that dynamic.
No.
But yeah, maybe that's a tangent we'll come to later on. So what initially brought you to the UK?
Kind of adventure. My wife's Irish, and we met and married in Texas, and lived there for a couple of years, and came over for, by American terms, trip of a lifetime, 3 whole weeks. Used up all my holiday allowance, and went to Paris. And my wife speaks good French, and spent some time in Ireland, in London, and really loved it. It was great. And we thought, well, we didn't have any kids or anything, and let's come over for 6 months. And that was 29 years ago. So here we are.
That's how it goes, isn't it? I mean, it was the same thing. I'm looking out my window here, but if you'd have said sort of 10 years ago, you'd be living out here full time, and I came here for the first time. It's a common story in the Alps. It's sort of people who have come out and never went home.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah, okay, and so we met. We met on I'm guessing it was a basic course. I'm not sure which one, and I'm not sure when.
I was thinking. I think it was we were doing a Fortec in Verbier back about 5 years ago.
Oh my god! Yeah, I got very, very bad memories of that. I was going through a divorce at the time, and I wasn't skiing very well. I was a bit fat, and I failed that. I checked out of that one on a Wednesday.
Yeah.
But that wasn't. I got not very happy memories of Verbier actually until this date because of that week. And then after that, you came, once we got the ski school set up here, I was short of an instructor for a week, so you came out for me, didn't you? And you taught with the school that you knew, and that was a really fantastic week actually. Yeah,
it was great. It was it really kind of squared a circle for me. My very, very first job as a ski instructor after qualifying 13 years ago was teaching school kids from a local school in Essex on a dry slope here in Brentwood. And it was the exact same school group 13 years later that you had brought out, for their alpine trip. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah. Oh, that's brilliant, isn't it? I mean, and I really, really enjoyed that week, and I tried to get you out again this year, but you were bogged down with that little detail of your 30th wedding anniversary. Which
my wife just about said, she was going to kill me being away for work that weekend, so I couldn't make it this year. But maybe next time. But yeah, it worked out great. I think we had a weekend group of adults from my school out the week before, and it tied in really nicely. And I don't generally get the chance to teach beginners, so it was a fun change for me.
Yeah, well, that's right. I mean, your model. I mean, this is one of the reasons actually, Scott, that I wanted to get you on, because I've interviewed various people, and a lot of those guys are all based out here or based out in the mountains. So we've kind of what you've got is an extremely different model of teaching skiing, and I find that extremely interesting. So maybe we can go down that road. So your ski school is called Inside Out Skiing, and you work most of your time indoor, right? In the fridge.
Yeah, I'd say it's about 50-50, but yeah, I mean, it's funny if I was there yesterday teaching. The season finished for me a couple of weeks ago, and now we're back into the Snowdome at Hemel Hempstead, and we'll be working there up through until the winter season, running clinics for fairly good recreational skiers.
That's cool. Okay, so for those of you who don't have this weird thing that we have in the UK and Europe, and I guess there must be some in China right now as well. So Hemel Hempstead used to be an outdoor slope. It used to be a dry slope, and now what they did effectively is remodel it, put a roof on it, and then they've got this kind of real snow indoor thing going on. And I've skied there a lot. I skied also at Milton Keynes too. I just think it's fantastic. It's a great way to access kind of real snow, or have that sensation of sort of sliding on real snow, which is very different to the kind of the dry slope setup.
Yeah, it's similar in a lot of ways. Just the surface is a lot better for, it's natural snow. You get some grip, and it's like skiing outdoors, and it's very much like a driving range just at a golf club, golf course. It's not a substitute, but it's a great place to train in the off season and keep your skills sharp.
Okay, and so your model. So you said that you don't often do absolute beginners. So your average inside out client comes to you with already a decent level of skill. They're sort of progressors or improvers or whatever you want to call it, or how's it going?
Yeah. I mean, for a couple of reasons. One, maybe going back to the beginning, my first job ever as a ski instructor really came after I had done my level 2 award, and I was working towards my level 3. And the first course I took was a race coaching module, and it was quite tough, and I managed to pass that, and I was real happy about that. And the guy that was examining offered me a job as his sort of assistant coaching under 12s, the minis, up at Milton Keynes, which is another snow center in the middle of England. Okay. Which was around before Hemel Hempstead was open.
Who was that who offered you that?
That was Ross Green. Ross Green was quite a. He's an ex-Olympian. He was the head of coaching for Basie for many years, and also is a level 4 ISTD. And I think, by memory, I think he said he's the only non-Austrian to complete the Austrian race coaching qualification. So he's a very, very high-end guy, and I was absolutely delighted to be offered a job. So I jumped in the car at 5 a.m. every Sunday to go do race club and coach the little kids for a couple of years. And off the back of that, really, I managed to get offered the head under 12s coach for Hemel when it opened up as a Snowdome. So that then kind of gave me a little bit of street cred to approach the center, and a guy named Pete Gillespie, who maybe it's mentioned in dispatches, I think, on some of the other podcasts.
He's in all of them,
is the director of snow sports there. Yeah, and very, very welcoming, very helpful. They view the snow center as very much like a mountain. You can rent lanes from us. They allow independents to come in as long as they have something to offer that they don't particularly do, and the reason we don't teach beginners is that's their bread and butter. So our deal with them is we're not allowed to work on a lesson slope or take people up until they get to sort of parallel standard and are able to ski the main slope at Hemel. So that's where we kind of kick in.
I've written to Pete about this a couple of times, because you will not believe the number of times that I have I've had clients up here in wherever, in the Port Soleil or wherever, and they said, oh yeah, we did some introductory lessons in Hemel, or and they come out with a decent level of ability after only a couple of hours here and there, or maybe slightly more than that, but what it does is it gives them a little head start, so they get ahead on their holiday. They're out here on vacation, but they've already got the moves a little bit, and it means that they can progress so much quicker. They don't have that sort of 3-hour session of kind of introductory stuff and learning how to make a snowplow. They've already got that. And I often write to Pete and say, thank you, your team are doing a great job down there at Hemel.
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely fantastic. And funny, if that was the original concept for Inside Out, was doing just that. We were going to, give people a course of lessons and then accompany them on their first ever trip to the mountains.
Cool. Right.
Yeah, that was the original idea, and everyone that knows how to ski thought, yeah, it's brilliant. You teach them in the Snowdome. You help them out with the rental equipment. You make sure the lift passes are sorted and everything's all good. But the people that didn't know how to ski kind of went, "Can I just go on holiday?" So it sounded good, but it didn't quite go, and we kind of changed gears in the first year or two. And somewhat oddly, I mean, I'm just a humble level 3, and I've trained with a lot of level 4s and examiners. But at the Snowdomes, we're kind of the most experienced people. There's only a small handful of level 3s and 4s that work in the domes, and certainly during the wintertime, they're all off in the mountains working full time and doing seasons. So we kind of, in some ways, started mopping up the more experienced skiers that were looking for higher end lessons.
Okay. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's really great. Tell me, because we are going to get on later to authorizations, the way you can work and bits and pieces like that, because you're something of an expert on that. But
I've had to be.
yeah. Well, if you want to take your clients places, that's a thing. But to set up a ski school in the UK, it's bizarre. I've got a ski school out here, but I wouldn't know how to go about it in the UK. How do you go about that?
Well, yeah, it's quite straightforward, really, because unlike, say, France, skiing isn't a regulated profession in the UK. So technically, anyone can set up a ski school. You just set up a limited company and you offer ski lessons. You do need to have some qualifications to really get some liability insurance. So just any Joe off the street can't set up a ski school and teach skiing.
Okay.
If there was a problem, you need to have professional liability insurance and that sort of thing. So with a BASI license or an IAC license, there's really no stopping anyone setting up a ski school and taking people out, whether that be in the Scottish mountains or potentially working in the Snowdomes. Now,
that's very different to
when
how
we operate in the Snowdome. It's their facility, and we need to abide by their rules. They have insurance issues that they got to contend with, and we need to show that we've got all our paperwork in order and CRB checks and first aid licenses and all that sort of stuff. And Pete very graciously allows us to work there as an external, as a licensed external instructor. So they've got a small handful of people that do things similar to us that they bring in, and we're kind of more the niche offering, and people can get lessons at a more advanced stage than they would offer through their ski school.
Oh wow, okay. So it's not really. So my equivalent knowledge is that of Switzerland. So you have to have reached the highest level in their certification system before you can set up a ski school here, and you have to attend a director's course as well, which is a couple of days in a classroom or whatever. But but in the UK, actually, the access to the market is much easier as long as you can come to a deal with the places that you could teach.
Yeah, absolutely, and there's quite a few, not necessarily ski schools per se, where they've got a big structure and they run groups like we do. It could be an independent. You might be a level 3. You might be a freestyle coach, for instance. There's a few guys doing that, or a snowboard coach. So there might be more as independent operators as opposed to a ski school.
Oh wow. Okay. All right. And so you're not allowed to pick up. Well, not allowed. The agreement is that you don't teach beginners on the beginner slope. So then your people find you, these sort of coming to parallel skiers who are on the big slope. They come and find you, or do you sort of you advertise presumably, but do you get sort of referred on also from Hemel? Or
it comes from a range of sources. I mean, really, when we started, a lot of the business came from. Because I was working as a race coach, it was a lot of the parents. We teach the parents in the evening or outside the race club. Generally quite a good standard of skier. See how the kids progress, and think, well, maybe we can do something similar. So we kind of modeled the ski school around almost in some ways like a recreational club. I mean, the reason these kids get good, even from the dry slopes or the snow domes, is they go regularly. They go 2 hours a week, 40 weeks a year maybe, and that's a lot of training. Then they go out in the mountains for a week and they're really ripping. So, they don't get good by going around poles. They get good by through regular periodized training. We really focus on skills with the little ones, and then we take them in the gates when they're a little bit older and stronger. And it got me thinking, it's the same should hold for adults, as you said. If you come to the sport later in life, there's no difference in starting at 7 or starting at 50. We go through the same progression with skills. And so we set up kind of like a race club for recreational adults. So in the sense that we offer, like, each month we have a different focus, and the clinic might be on skills for moguls or skills for carving, that sort of thing. And so we try to keep it fresh and not just do the same thing over and over with people. And they start coming more regularly. They get better and they move onwards. And then when we take them out to the mountains, it's a different situation. So we're able to use the terrain, and we might offer classes on or week courses on carving skills, or it might be all mountain introductions. We did an intro to skinning this year, so that sort of thing. So we try to keep it fresh when we go into the mountains. But certainly indoors, it's very much modeled on a periodized training program that we use with the race club kids.
So let's touch on that then. So you've also got the second part of your business model. So you've got this sort of adults club. You don't still do the racing with the kids, do you?
I left it 2 years ago. So I did about 8 years, and as the business grew for Inside Out, I was finding myself really away pretty much most of the winter. I was doing race training for trying to achieve my Euro test, and so I was out pretty much from November to April. And I'd get back, and I did about 80 to 100 under 12s and 4 coaching groups, and all the kids would have been all spread out into their own groups because they wanted to be with their mates, and no one was following the program. And I just kind of felt like I was a substitute teacher as opposed to the getting to know them. So I just didn't feel I was giving it my best go. So I bowed out 2 years ago, but I'm still keen. I might have another crack at it. I'm thinking about it.
Okay, all right. But so that was a bit of a tangent. So the other part of your business is the trips kind of element to it, similar to what we were talking about with Phil Smith, and I think Warren was doing this a little bit as well. In terms of your market trips to your clients, and some of them that you came up with are absolutely brilliant. You go all over the place.
I mean, kind of that's the other side. There's inside and there's out, and really we set the school up. Okay. To develop a client base was very much working with people at the Snow Center, and the long-term intention when we first started it, we did 1 week. We did a first week to Solden in Austria, then we built it up to 2, and last year I think I did 9 weeks. So we've got the client base has evolved and gotten a bit bigger, so we're able to put more trips on. And when we first started, when we wanted to kind of do similar to like what Interski does in Aosta, just get people to come out on a part-time basis. I mean, at that point, I was working full-time. I was hopeful to get a couple of weeks in the mountains teaching, and I didn't particularly want to work for someone else. I mean, I've always had my own businesses and stuff, so I wanted to set up a structure that would allow me to do that, and this is what we came up with. So we very much only work with adults. We don't work with families, and we pick the kind of lowest season, cheapest weeks, and then kind of bolt on the coaching package as part of the holiday.
Okay, so we obviously it's nice to have a local fixer as well, because obviously you took one of the weeks to Morjan. Which we kind of hooked you up with some accommodation providers. I'm sure you know people all over the Alps. But so where did you go last year for these 9 weeks? Give us a few names.
First we start off in Teen on the glacier there in November. We do a kind of 4-day preseason tune-up for people that just want to kind of kickstart the season, and then move over to Maribel for the very first opening week there, where it's just deadly quiet and cheap, and the skiing's really good generally. The snow's excellent, so we do that one. Then in January, back to Maribel, working with a partner ski school out there, a guy named Derek Chandler, who runs Ski Marmalade. He's a BASE examiner and I think 20 seasons in Maribel, so he looks after sort of the more off-piste elements for us. So we do an off-piste intro for people that are kind of just dipping their toes off the sides of the piece and want to expand their skill base and do that. Then where did we go? We went to Becerra Barret last year.
Okay.
Which was lovely. I mean, we tried it every 2 years to put on a kind of an unusual trip. We call them hidden gems. So this last year was Becerra. The 2 years before that was Ruka in Finland, which was a really interesting, cool place to go skiing if you've never been.
I'm quite ignorant of where Becerra Barret.
Barret is it's in the Pyrenees. It's sort of west of Andorra, so it's kind of up Barcelona way. If you go,
is it Spanish?
Just below Toulouse.
It's Spanish.
Yes, it is. Yeah, it's very very Catalan. But Spanish is the main language. Yeah.
Okay. Oh wow, that's cool. That is a hidden gem.
Yeah, and so much so, we're putting that one on the program on a permanent basis. So we're going back there for 2 weeks this coming season.
I've heard a lot about Andorra and Pyrenean skiing. There's a podcast, another podcast called the Ski Podcast, and a few of those guys go there all the time. They absolutely rave about it. I'm determined to get down there at some point because it sounds like it's just the kind of to me it sounds like the sort of ski stations that I absolutely love. Like small, friendly, not these sort of mega resorts. That's the direction that I'm going when I'm trying to visit places these days.
Yeah, it's like that, but it's actually surprisingly a bigger ski domain than you think. It doesn't look it on paper, but it's quite a sizable resort with a lot of great sort of lift-served off-piste skiing.
Okay. Where else? What else is on your menu?
Then we were over in Madonna di Campio in Italy for a kind of a carving clinic. They don't have as much off-piste there, but just immaculately groomed piste, so it's a real good spot there.
Yeah.
And where else do we go? I went to Hintertux for a trip, and that was about it.
You just come back from Tux, right?
Yeah, that was actually a basic course for me, as opposed to with clients. Yeah.
How was the telemarketing, by the way?
It was enjoyable. We had some pretty rippy weather, so it was trying to learn telemark in 40 and 50 mile an hour winds was challenging. Let's put it that way.
So it's challenging enough to learn telemark.
Managed to get a pass, so that was happy.
Oh well, good for you. Good for you. It's something that I do. I just don't do it enough. I went out with. Do you know Joe Beer?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, sure.
So I went out with Joe just to kind of tune up my telemark thing, and I had a very, very, very I'm planning to get him on the podcast actually, because he's just completely he has a completely different view on everything, and I'm very much I really enjoyed that sort of 3 hours that I was telemarking around with him. Nice lunch after, and it was good just to catch up with him actually. But no, he gave me a few tips that kind of really made the telemark work again for me, which was fantastic. I really enjoy doing it. I just don't get enough time to do it.
I was the same boat. I was going to do that as my second discipline, 12 years ago, and never got around to it, and did a little bit here and there. But you do a full week with a proper instructor, and make some progress. So what do you know, huh?
How are your thighs after that week?
Not too bad, but not great.
You'll be walking weird for a week. Okay, cool. All right, so those trips then, so they're the trip sort of client base is drawn from your sort of club setup. So within your database, you'll market those things to those people, and then whoever comes, right? How many people are you getting on these trips roughly?
We've got about I think we've got about 900 clients now that we've taught indoors, and probably over half of those are repeat people that that come more than once, and we've got quite a few regulars that have done say 5 or 10 sessions with us indoors. So that's kind of the main pool for the alpine trips, and then sometimes we'll get we'll get people that have trained with us indoors, and they might bring their other half or friends and stuff like that. So it's not necessarily people we trained indoors, but primarily.
Yeah.
So we've got a couple hundred people that are fairly regular alpine clients with us, and some will come 1, 2, 3 trips a year. But pretty much for us, we're the second trip. We work with people that are keen, enthusiastic recreational skiers, and generally they're the best of their mates, and they want a 4-day or a 6-day course to tune up and just get that bit better. So and it's quite social. We get a lot of people coming on their own, and they get to know each other at Hemel at the Snowdome. They go on holiday. It's not a big drama. They're staying in a chalet, and it's all fun time.
Oh, good. That's really cool. That's really, really cool. I like that, and I really like that variety. I think that's an important thing. I do feel sorry sometimes for a lot of these guys who are teaching in the same resort. They're just skiing the same pistes over and over and over. It doesn't really have a great deal of opportunity to kind of explore new stuff. But when, that's why I set up our ski school the way I've set it up, so we get to ski in different resorts all the time. But I think when you can kind of make those trips to different places, it just makes it a little bit more interesting, doesn't it? Than the same old.
Completely. And when we set it up, at the time, my daughter was still at home. I wasn't able to go out as much as I would do. I just wasn't in a position to do seasons or base myself in the Alps. And so this is the model we came up with. And my daughter's slow in the nest, and I can do a little bit more in the mountains. I decided to, rather than base myself in one resort, just to move around and also keep it fresh for the clients. We go to the same resorts. They do get a bit fatigued. People have been there, done that a little bit, done some of the trips. So we try to move around a bit just to keep it all fresh.
Your daughter's flown the nest. I'm like 16 years behind you. I can't even imagine.
Yeah, I know. I saw it. All ahead of you, mate.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so I'm just going to flip back to the indoor experience, because I think this is quite an interesting one, which will be really interesting for all of the people that are kind of typically teaching outdoor. But my thought bubble here says, what's it like? Because the turnaround is quite quick. Typically the slope is, I don't know, 150, 200 meters long. Like, it's not very big.
Yeah.
I'm guessing you get a lot of repetition in, but like, what are the main differences from that and sort of general alpine teaching?
Well, yeah, very different. I mean, listen to Phil Smith's podcast with yourself, and Phil talks a lot about skiing, and it's very much in an open environment, and I couldn't agree more. But when we're training on, say, dry slopes or indoor snowdomes, it becomes more of a closed environment. As I said, the analogy I use is very much the driving range as opposed to being out in the open golf course. And because it's so consistent, and you can actually work much better on skills development with people. You're running laps on a consistent slope. You can get them to really practice and hone in on developing those skills and movement patterns that we're trying to do.
Okay. And how long is a sort of typical lap? How long are the sessions that you do?
It varies. We run a range of clinics. We do half-day clinics for what we call improvers, which are people that are just kind of getting into parallel standard, and typically maybe a little bit more nervous or earlier stage skiers. We limit those to 4 people group sizes and do half-day sessions on that, and the rest of the clinics are typically full day. 10 to 4 type of thing, hour and a half sessions on the slope. It gets quite cold in there because it's -6 in the freezer, but the floor is actually held at -16, so you actually get cold feet in there much more than you do in the mountains. So,
plus you haven't got any solar. Yeah, you don't have any solar radiation either, so you're kind of you don't get warm, I guess.
You get cold in there. So, we typically, like I said, do about an hour and a half, and we do a lot of video review. So that because the slope is quite consistent, we do laps. There's probably more feedback than you would use in a mountain environment, and much more extensive use of video feedback. And the type of people that want to learn how to ski or get better at skiing in August in a snowdome are pretty keen, enthusiastic people, and generally are quite technical in the way they like to learn. We find that they're more sort of students of the game, so they generally seek more feedback than just a normal ski school group that you get out on a holiday.
Yeah. I can see that. I mean, I often say to our clients, once they get, or kids especially, but once we get off of the beginner slopes, I'm often saying to them, look, the reason that skiing was originally invented, it wasn't just going up and down slopes for pleasure. It was to get from place to place, and that's part of what we're doing here. So we're learning how to ski, but also we're trying to get to that restaurant over there, or we're trying to get down to that lift, or we're trying to travel, and that's, we lose in a typical kind of, I don't know, half-day lesson or something. You lose a bunch of time on lifts, lift rides, 10-minute lift rides, or traveling from one spot to the other so you can do some teaching in the spot that you want to teach. There's a lot of kind of moving about, which I guess you don't get indoors. It must be quite intense for you too as the teacher.
Yeah, it is. It's more condensed. As you say, it's a 2-hour session, say, or an hour and a half, they're spinning laps. We can actually just park ourselves middle of the slope, give them some feedback as they pass by on the pommel lift, and they're getting a lot of skiing in. And it generally can be, we try to slow people down quite a bit and be more precise in their skiing. Rather than just hooning down, the slope and wasting a run. They're more focused on what we're trying to work on. And there's probably a much bigger use of drills for skills indoors. There's just not a lot of point just making 14 slalom turns and turning around and doing it again. It's more productive to try to isolate some skills that need working on and apply drills accordingly.
No, I can see that. I can see that. That's okay. Well, that's covered off a lot of stuff. Is that? I mean, is it crowded indoors?
It can be in the wintertime. I mean, I was there yesterday and it was dead. There's maybe 10 people in there. So in the off season, it's a fantastic place to train. We get into the school holiday periods in the wintertime, and it's just too busy to run group clinics. So from November to April, we actually just do private lessons. That's all we do. It just gets too busy and too crowded to do effective teaching on a group basis. So, but now we kind of kick into our off season time and running a group clinics, and it works great. It's a great place to train, and as you say, it's very focused on learning. So you have to be probably another difference is you have to be a lot more creative, I think, indoors. Running laps all day from an indoor Snowdome can get boring very, very quickly. So you need to kind of keep people entertained as well as challenged and focusing on their improvements. Otherwise, it gets boring real quick.
Yeah, I can see that.
And if it's not quite going your way or people are getting frustrated, you can't just take the opportunity to, look up at the sun and say, let's just shoot over here for this nice piece of powder. We don't have that opportunity, sadly.
It doesn't work. What do you do when that comes up? Because I can imagine that people do get afraid. You just thought you go upstairs for a coffee or something, or.
Yeah, I mean, we try to, generally because they're in a group situation, we typically do like an hour and a half blocks on the slope and then break for coffee or lunch and then do video review in between. And it's just keeping it fresh and keeping people interested. And that's a skill on its own. It's because we have quite, it's a tight group, so you just don't string out and do a lot of follow me. It's meet at the top, meet at the bottom, maybe work in pairs, do some group things. But you have to keep juggling it about to keep it interesting and very much to keep people coming back. I've got people that have done 10 or 20 lessons with me, and if you're not keeping it fresh, they're not going to be coming back.
Well, this is something that I did notice. Your style was very, very different as a ski teacher when you came out and you helped me out with that school group that week. Your approach was much, much more focused on lap coaching and getting real improvements out of these guys, straight away. And it's not a criticism at all. I'm just saying it was different. It was just noticeable that it was different. Whereas kind of I think the guys who are out in a sort of more of an alpine environment all of the time are kind of more used to just letting some time pass by doing stuff that isn't, focused on you must get better straight away all the time. I thought it was one of my biggest things that I noticed, in terms of your style versus kind of, the rest of my guys' style.
Yeah, and that's something I'm very conscious of. I mean, it's and in some ways that you got to be really careful that you just don't treat the mountains like a big snow dome, and because we are very focused on drills for skills indoors, and when I go out, I have to really tone that down, making sure that we're not just doing drills all day long. We're actually using the terrain. We're working in an open environment and using the terrain to challenge people as opposed to drill sets. So that's something I'm very conscious of when I'm teaching, that I don't end up coaching like I do in a dome after a long summer.
Well, yeah, because I guess you must have to. Yeah, there is a period of adaptation, right, for you, where you sort of, right, okay, we're in a much bigger. The terrain is more limitless here. We can actually just go and spend some time just skiing. Rather than,
definitely. That's just keeping that in focus. And it sounds silly, but it's something that you need to be conscious of when we're teaching in both environments.
Yeah, I think it's mega important. Often I'll just put a pause on the lesson and I'll say to my clients, look, snow's great here. Let's just ski, right? We'll just ski.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I
Because,
mean,
you can't,
mileage and laps is,
yeah.
Mileage and, using different terrain is where you really consolidate all that learning that we've spent all that hard work in the domes doing funny drills.
Yeah, exactly. I hope you're enjoying my chat that I had with Scott. I really, really enjoyed listening to him about the differences of skiing indoors and outdoors, and how he goes about keeping it interesting for his clients on such a quick turnaround on those indoor slopes. For those of you that don't know or haven't skied on them, I mean, the slope is only 150, 200 meters long. The laps are very, very quick, so it can be very, very intense in there. And cold, if I remember rightly from my time skiing back in the UK. In part two, we talk about skiing in Europe, so the trips that Scott goes away on, and we talk about, actually it gets quite, I wouldn't say dry, but there's some interesting stuff in there about the rules and regulations in different European countries. And then once we cover all of that off, we talk about a little tangent about big guy skiing. So maybe of interest for all of those of you 6 foot and above. So enjoy the second half, and I've got a few really cool interviews coming up. I'm just in the process of organising to meet people now. But for now, enjoy the second part of this, and for all of those of you who have been teaching all winter, I hope you had a really, really good one. See you soon. Bye. All right, so look, this talking of outdoors, because this leads me nicely on to some of these other points that I think we should cover, is how am I going to go down this road? So when you're doing trips, you've just said to me, okay, that you've been to places like Austria, Italy, France, and Spain. Now, the guys who are listening from, say, the US or Canada, you may not be familiar with this, and indeed some of the others may not be, or indeed other places. But in Europe, there are very, very specific rules to who can and cannot teach in Europe. And this is the reason why we have this thing called the Euro test, and this is the reason why people spending all this money to try and get through to level 4 STD, or their country's equivalent, to have the right to teach in these countries. Now, that's not necessarily the case, is it, Scott?
No, it isn't. And there's a lot of dogma in ski instruction. There's people just assume that because things have always been done a certain way, that's the only way that you can do things. My first ever gig in the mountains was working for Ross for the race club at the British Champs in Maribel. And I'm thinking at the time, I'm a fresh ski instructor. I had a coaching license, and I came out as a club coach working for Ross. And I'm asking, is this all okay? I'm expected to get the handcuffs slapped on me at any time. And is this cool? And he said, no, it's a whole different setup if you work as a club coach as opposed to under an instructor license. So that was one way. In certain territories that we work. We actually have a club that's set up and affiliated with Snowsport England. And clubs don't necessarily have to be race clubs. There's the Metropolitan Police Ski Club. There's the BA Pilot Ski Club, et cetera, et cetera. So you can be a recreational ski club and work with your club members as a club coach. As long as you fly in and go out with them, you're not touting for business locally, and you're not allowed to teach beginners. So you're only allowed to teach club members that you have an ongoing coaching relationship with. And that works really well in places that recognize that and are used to that. Maribel being a good example, or Teen, where there's a whole lot of clubs that come out, use the Glacier to train on. They're not all ISTDs. They're not all past their Euro test. Some are, ex-World Cup skiers that never got an instructor qualification, but have coaching licenses. So that's one way we work. And that's very much dependent on the valley really we're working in, what they're used to.
Right.
So in France, we work on that. In other areas, we utilize the European legislation and European directives to work under the freedom of movement. In Europe at the moment, Brits are allowed to, or European citizens are allowed to work anywhere in other countries. Now, skiing is quite complicated in a lot of ways. This can get to be fairly dry on how it actually works. But you talked about the Euro test, and I was listening to Phil Smith talking about some of the history and how they set up. They challenged the local French laws when he wanted to set up in France by utilizing European legislation, which kind of overrides all the respective nations' working rights laws. So, what ended up happening was probably back in 2000. They concocted the Euro test and the European mountain security off-piste test as a test for any nation to compare their top level awards to. Mm-hmm. So a French or a Italian ex-racer can't look down their nose at a Brit or a Dutch guy that's managed to pass his Euro test in EMS. So that kind of leveled the playing field for people at the top level. But that's only one side of the coin. There's two ways to work in Europe. One is that way, which is known as the right of establishment. So if you want to set up as a local, say in France or Italy, if you've achieved that highest level, you are allowed to set up and talk for business, do just what a local will do. Mm-hmm. On the other side of the coin is something that most people don't know in BASI, certainly, is part of that same legislation is something called the freedom to provide services, provision of services. So if you want to go on a temporary basis and ply your trade, whether that's a software engineer or a ski instructor, as long as you're coming out with groups from your home country, mm-hmm. and you are legal to do what you would do in your home country, mm-hmm. you can do that in a European country by declaring your intention to work for a temporary period. So, what we do is we're not allowed to set up in competition with the people that have gone through all that hard work to get their ISTD, which gives them the hard-fought right to set up and compete against the locals on a level playing field. Yeah, we bring people in, and it works just fine. Each country has slightly different paperwork to fill out, but the basics are that you need to declare a certain week, or 2 or 3 or whatever you want to work. Typically, it's up to 4 weeks in an individual country. Mm-hmm. Let them know you have to provide them with a proof of liability insurance, that your licenses are up to date, you've got a criminal records check, and first aid certificate. And you send that paperwork in, and if you don't hear back from them in 30 days, typically, you're good to go. And some countries are a little bit more progressive. They actually give you a piece of paper. In Italy, for instance, you get a license and a badge to wear, so that they know that you've complied with the legislation and are doing the right thing.
Yeah, that's right. No, I've seen that. I've seen that. But but in terms of France, if that 30 days thing just passes, then that's okay, right?
Yeah, you're good to go, but that not having a piece of paper kind of makes you feel a bit naked. We tend to carry. I carry my declaration paper. I actually submit that by registered post. And if we don't, basically the European laws is because they don't want to have it set up where you have to every time you want to travel to work, whether that be a ski instructor or any other profession. Too much red tape, so they just have the system where you just declare, and unless you are rejected, you are good to go. Yeah. In France, I do that, but also belt and braces. I work under the club construct because that's more recognized and known. So under the club, we have to provide them a list of the club members, their membership numbers, and where and how long we're intending to teach, or coach, I should say. And that works just fine. You know, in teen, we notify the lift company. They come back and ask us, you know, if they can help with lift passes or accommodation, and it's all very friendly. And I think touching on what, you know, Phil and maybe yourself have said is, you know, you just need to work with people and let them know what you're doing. You know, we'd never turn up unannounced. You know, if we go to a new resort, touched on Finland. I didn't really have a really detailed clue as to what the regulations were there. So, you know, we contacted the head of the Finnish Ski Instructor Association. He met us on our first day and notified all the ski school guys, and they were delighted to have us. You know, we had 20 odd people from the UK in a little resort in Finland, and everybody was happy.
Yeah. And this is, I think this is quite an important thing, isn't it? Because it's important, I think, that people's eyes are open to the fact that there isn't only one way of doing this.
Yeah, definitely. You know, it's slightly unusual in the sense that we're based in the UK, and we import our clients and ski instructors from another country. So I'm not looking to compete or step on anybody's toes locally. But on the same token, when I say I go to team, we wear our ski school uniforms with pride. Anyone ask any questions, happy to explain how we do things.
No, rightly so. And that is also an important thing. I think this sort of concept of the ownership of the clients is where are your clients coming from? That is, I think, if you go into another country and those are sort of local clients, I think that's when it becomes a bit of an issue. But if the clients are yours, as long as you have those declarations in place, I don't think it's a big deal.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can remember vividly our first time in Italy. In a new resort, we tried this, and just out of courtesy, we thought, well, we'll set up a meeting with the local ski school director, and we popped into the office, and a bunch of gnarly ex-racers hanging out, and they said, "Oh, you're the club from England, fantastic! I've got a fax here from Rome, It's really cool that you guys have followed the rules, and anything we can do for you, if you want any gates set up, we're happy to help." So again, just being upfront with people and trying to. And some of this, maybe the smaller resorts, they're delighted to get people in from different nationalities, and it all works if we just all work together.
Well, I think you're right, and also there is an aspect. You're right. There is a very large aspect, a tourism aspect to this, right? If you've got people that are wanting to bring clients to your resort, you'd be foolish to say no to that. I think anything that brings funds to the Alps for the local businesses, the restaurants, or whatever. It's
it works. And one of the other things probably worth mentioning is that the temporary provision of services. It's not like a defined number of days or weeks. They keep it open and flexible so that they can bring in people from the outside and turn the tap down if they want to. A really good example is in Madonna, where we go. Over the last couple of years, for whatever reason, a lot of Polish people are coming in, doing very much what we do. They bring coachloads of people in, they bring their own instructors. And it's great for local businesses, but it's actually gotten so busy that the local ski schools have suffered a little bit. So what they've done there is they've just said, rather than being able to work for 7 weeks a year, which is what it used to be, they've toned the tap down to 2 weeks. So that's affected us in the sense that we can only run 2 weeks in that particular region every season, which is fine. But it's it all works for everybody involved. So it's fluid, but you just need to keep abreast of what's going on.
Okay. Oh, that's super interesting. I like I say, I'm not really au fait with how it works in other countries. We obviously have a proximity to France here, so this is of particular importance to us. But and in fact, I think there was an email sent around to all the Swiss ski schools about this whole declaration issue at the start of this season. But as for other countries, I didn't know that. I don't know. Did you still have to make a declaration for Finland, for example?
We didn't. In the end, it was just by speaking to the head of the instructor association, he said, "We're so small, we don't really worry about it." Frankly, so it was. And in Spain, they were pretty relaxed as well. They very much said you can do that, but we spoke to the head of the tourism for that valley.
Yeah.
They check with their government officials and said as long as we view as a club coming in and out, so it's absolutely fine. So each place kind of has either a strict or a non-strict interpretation of the legislation. But the key thing is that there are European directives that sit over the top of all the national legislation, and as long as you're following that, you're generally in good shape.
Yeah.
And the reason we found out about this, I was trying to figure out a way to work. We had the club construct, but I got my level 3, and I was looking at the Euro test training and doing that. And when I read the actual Eurotest agreement, it actually states all this quite clearly. But it's not something that people refer to too often. So certainly in BASI, they just assume that you have to go through and get your level 4 before you can set foot into the hallowed ground of France to work.
Well, I think this is quite an important thing, and it, like you say, it's dogma. It is, a lot of people have been told that this is the way that these things are supposed to be done. When in fact, when you do take the time to read the legislation, when you do take the time to kind of look into it, actually that's not the only way. And like you say, you're living proof of it, right? You're out there, you're in France, you're teaching people perfectly legally.
For sure. I mean, and a really good example of that, is that France and Italy have a single tier of ski instructor. They have trainees, and then they have qualified, and that's it. So there's one level. Yet in Italy, on the other side of Mont Blanc, you've got Brits working quite happily in Aosta for inner ski. Pretty much most people I know that's come through BASI have done a couple of weeks with inner ski while they're doing their level 2 and maybe working towards the level 3. And it works just fine because they apply the European directives correctly, or in a more known way. Whereas in France, they maybe try to keep that under the carpet a little bit, so to keep people out in some ways rather than welcoming them in.
Yeah, you're right, and I think actually the Brits that maybe know about this, or maybe they don't, but they're certainly they're complicit within that, which I think is an important thing to note. It's almost, it looks like they're sort of acting as a gatekeeper for this kind of knowledge, but in fact there's a lot of people out there spending money on Eurotest stuff, but maybe they don't need to.
And it's kind of frustrating at times, but it's again interesting to listen to Jazz Lamb, who skied with Jazz, I know him really well, and he was sort of saying how the Port of Soleil, because it borders Switzerland, a lot of people train and work on the Swiss side, and then once they're qualified, they jump over to the French side and set up an independent ski school. And he was talking about sort of maybe a little bit more market saturation for British instructors. But then at the same, and the next sentence said, we're absolutely rammed at the holiday periods, the Feb half term, the Easter, and that, and we could sell the lessons 10 times over. And I'm thinking, well, if we could apply the European directives correctly, we could get level 3s, filling those short term gaps and doing a few weeks training while they're learning, and everyone would win. But that's a battle for BASI to fight, I think.
Yeah, well, assuming they want to fight it, right? But but it also applies in the same way. This is quite an important thing, I think, probably to realise. And there are a number of kind of domains here in Europe that span 2 different countries. It's the Port de Soleil is a great example. It's French and Swiss. And there's an informal agreement here, that people can come and go in between the 2 countries. But actually, we see it all the time. All these French instructors are over on the Swiss side. The Swiss side is lovely and quiet, even at half term. There's not too many people around. It's absolutely mobbed with French instructors teaching their client in somewhere like Le Creuset, for example. But actually, if you applied the letter of the law, those guys are teaching illegally in the Canton Valais in Switzerland. So they don't have the right authorizations.
They don't hold the patent.
They don't hold the brevet or anything like that. They don't have the right tickets, and it applies also when the Swiss guys go over onto the French side, but that's just part of it. And I imagine they have the same issue in Zermatt, Chevigny, where I imagine Swiss guys go over into Italy, they probably don't get bothered that much. So there has to be a certain amount of flexibility in those regions. If you were to rock up, I think, into the middle of, say, Megève or something, and started teaching there as a Swiss guy or a Italian guy, that would be a completely different kettle of fish. But there are certain grey areas here in the Alps that are affected by all these kind of things.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times what we do, and people look at it as like we're exploiting loopholes or something like that, and it's really not the case. It's very much we're following the rules, and places like Aosta or Trentino, they're not odd loopholes. They're just applying the directives correctly, and are welcoming foreign tourism, so it can work very well.
Yeah, I hear that. All right, while we're in the dry section, let's just plow through it before we get to before we get to anything else. I heard some noise somewhere about something to do with something called the Delegated Act. Now that might also be only applicable to our Euro listeners, but what is that has changed recently, and what has changed about it, or is there any relevance to this to what we've been talking about?
Yeah, it's quite boring, but it's fairly relevant.
Do your best
topic.
To jazz it up for us.
Yeah, I mean, what the Delegate Act is it maybe needs a little bit of explanation. The ski instruction is quite complicated in a lot of ways. In a European basis, like I said, some countries have a single tier of instruction, and some have 3 or 4. Some countries it's a regulated profession. In France, it's regulated, like rock climbing would be, or physiotherapy, or other things. So they actually have it as a regulated profession. In the UK, it's not, and in most of the flatland nations, it isn't. So that brings additional complications. So in an effort to harmonize freedom of movement throughout Europe, they tried. This is back in 2000. To come up with a framework so that people can move about and have their qualifications recognized. Now, what they did with ski instruction was basically the French model, which was have a race test, the Euro test, the Giant Slalom race, as well as a mountain security exam with a mountain guide, and that sort of defined what a top level instructor could do, but that what only addressed was the top level to allow you for the right of establishment to set up and have a business in a foreign country. That agreement was kind of a gentleman's agreement, if you will, between ski instructor associations, between the French trade union, the ESF, and it worked for a few years. But what they tried to do is use ski instruction as a kind of pilot program for a professional card so that you could work throughout Europe. And what they did 7 years ago was kind of something called a memorandum of understanding between all the European nations that had ski instructors, and it gave it a little bit more teeth. It made it legal because it was governmentally recognized, the MOU stamp, which is given to level 4s in BASI and top certs in other nations, and allows them to move without restriction between countries. Now that was a pilot program for 7 years. They were trying to modify the Euro test. I was quite active in trying to make it a little bit fairer, the Euro test itself. And the Delegated Act is the summation of that, where it's actually gone into European law now. So there's a specific act for ski instructors. And the act contains effectively the Euro test, speed test as it stands now, with a slightly easier pass percentage. So it used to be 18% for men and 24% for women. And after 7 years of discussion, the decision was that they're just going to make that a touch easier and bumped it up a percentage point.
Oh wow!
So. Yeah, so that's
reassuring for everybody.
Literally in the last couple of weeks. So I'm not sure that's actually been signed into European law.
Yeah.
But each individual country has 2 years then to enact that to their own local legislation. So I'm not sure that's going to have much impact. Maybe in France at Alpe d'Huez for the people running their Euro test in December, but we'll see how that goes.
Okay. How does that affect these short-term authorizations? Presumably, it doesn't make any difference.
Yeah, that's the interesting part. So the delegated act and the MOU before it all refer to temporary provision of services, and that just rather than having a special test for that, they're just saying that we can operate under the general directives, and so effectively nothing's changed in terms of how I operate and how other people do on a temporary basis.
Yeah.
And they're talking about the next stage of the delegated act is to go from just addressing the top certs between all the nations and then looking a little bit lower down to see how people can transfer across border with not having the top certification and work on a temporary basis. Now, there's something called this is fairly dry, but called a European qualification framework.
Right.
And that's how they look at other qualifications. Well, that might be physiotherapy, as I touched on, or others. So if you're a governing body, and BASI did a lot of good work on this through the Edinburgh University to get their qualifications recognized on a European basis. So a level 1 BASI is a Scottish qualification of 6, for instance, and on a European basis, they give that a 4, pardon me. And so what BASI's done is mapped their, each level into, at least for alpine skiing, into the European qualification framework. And the French have done the same thing. So kind of oddly, a level 3 and a level 4 BASI is considered the same level from a European qualifications framework basis. Now, obviously, they're different level skiers, but in terms of the right to work and substantial differences, that it opens up a big can of worms because a French qualification is actually lower than that.
All right, that's interesting.
Yeah, so it's an interesting one, and when you declare your right to work, they can only reject you if they can show a substantial difference. Is the terminology between your qualification and training compared to a local guy's, and if we're both the same on the European qualification framework scale, that's going to be quite difficult for them to do that. So I'm quite hopeful that from a temporary provision of services basis, we'll be able to carry on hopefully up until Brexit happens, but we don't want to get into that.
Well, I was just thinking, I'm sitting here thinking about that because Brexit bloody comes up every time in these, but actually, I think I would be. I'm not sure exactly how BASI position themselves when Brexit comes. I know they're quite in with the Frenchies, but there's an awful lot of people who are sitting around with a British qualification who have their carte professionnelle in France. But what's gonna happen if Brexit comes? The UK is out of the European Union. Those guys' qualification is kind of worthless in the eyes of the French, isn't it?
Yeah, I think talking to friends that are ISTDs in France, my understanding of it is very much you want to get French residency, you want to make sure that you're paying French taxes, and you want to get as much sort of legal foothold in say France or a foreign country that as much as possible. Hopefully you'll get a visa. If you go to the extent of getting French residency, you should be okay. You've got a French, recognized qualification, and you're residing in France.
Well, that's assuming that the French continue to
on a season basis, charge in pounds and don't really have any presence in those countries. It's going to be difficult. But who knows in some ways.
Well, that's one of the issues. I see an awful lot of ski schools who are doing exactly that, right? They're coming, they're taking a whole bunch of money out of the economy. The taxes aren't being paid here. And that, I would be worried if I was those guys, especially if the French turn around and say, well, hey, because the French, I'm not sure how much it is, but the French are presumably they regard the high numbers of British instructors kicking around over on the French side, and they would love to have them out because it means more work for the French schools.
Yeah, there's an element. I think I've got a little place in Maribel, and get talking to some of the ESF guys out there, and their main beef isn't so much that people are coming in taking their clients; it's more that they're not paying their fair share of social taxes.
Well, and which are huge, by the way, in France. And it's very difficult, I think, to make a living in France. There's a lot of kind of black money that kicks around, and like I say, when guys come in, they charge the pounds, they come, they stay for 4 months, and then they disappear again.
Yeah.
That can create a lot of resentment, and I do understand that. There's a lot of taxes to pay in France which aren't getting paid or should be. Yeah, I'd be worried about that if I was them. All right, well, let's get off this dry topic.
Okay.
Because my brain's hurting. Let's go back to this topic of big guy skiing. So I think this is quite an important thing because we turn up on exams often. We've been at this for a long time. And I've often seen that it's the sort of the smaller guys who look dynamic. I think there's like a height limit where you don't look dynamic anymore. I'm not sure where that is. I think it's probably anywhere beyond like 6 foot, probably. And it's something to do with kind of how quickly your body's able to move from one side to the other. I've often seen people on exams who are kind of, they're doing the right things, gripping in the right place and all of that sort of stuff to meet the criteria, but they just don't look like they've got it, especially in moguls, especially in sort of shorter turns, Is that something you've come across on various kind of exam scenarios? You're a big guy. You're 6 foot plus, 6'5",
6'4", yeah, 6'4", 6'4" and about 98 kilos. So I ski with a different style because I'm big and heavy, and for me, I noticed that I pretty much I need to work the ski from tip to tail, and so I get gigged on that sometimes on exams where they're saying, well, just roll onto an edge and balance it through the center of the boot. And I'm like, well, that doesn't work because I'm pushing against 98 kilos, and the same size ski you're on. Maybe say a fifth slalom ski reacts differently if you're 100 kilos as opposed to 60. So
yeah.
So I think there's an element. I mean, I don't want to use that as an excuse, but as much as they like to say we're just looking at what the skis are doing, I think there's definitely an aspect of form when you're being examined. I think any tiny amounts of, say, lack of lateral or rotational separation show up more if you're a bigger or taller guy.
Yeah,
I think there's an element of that. So you just need to be a little bit more precise in how you ski. And I think there's also a little bit of if everyone it was funny. I was looking at the Basie demo team, the national team, the group photo. And I know most of the guys on there, and I'm thinking actually the biggest guy was probably Tom Waddington, who's maybe 6 foot 6'1". The rest were sort of like 5'6", 5'8".
Yeah.
And you kind of go, well, they ski with a certain style because that's their morphology and that's the way their body works, and not necessarily holds true for, like I say, the example, the 6'9" slalom guy. He'll ski with a less active way, but still achieving big edge angles and high performance out of the ski. So it's it can be an excuse, I think, but it's something that maybe they should be a bit more aware of.
It's certainly, I think the easiest one to kind of look at is in two equivalent turns. I think if your legs are longer, your body is longer, it's going to take a longer amount of time to get your skis from one side to the other. You see what I mean? So you're going to look.
Appears to be less active.
Yeah, you're going to look slower.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And I think probably, I'm not really sure. I'm still kind of developing this as a theory, but I think taller guys look like they're inclining more, or maybe they do, than someone who is maybe slightly shorter. I get the feeling that it's easier for shorter guys to angulate. Angulate. I don't know the word. It's kind of I'm a month out of ski season now, so I've lost all of my tech words. But I get the feeling that it takes those 2 points. It takes, if you're a big guy, you're plus 6 foot, you're going to incline more. But in addition, you're going to take a longer time to get from one side to the other. You haven't got, especially if you're smaller, right? I think smaller people generally tend to kind of move a bit quicker. Right? They're a bit more like bird-like, They're able to make those faster
certainly
movements.
More agile, typically more agile. And I also think, too, there's a lot... I tend to ski quite square to the skis and much more stacked, because if I counter my hips, it just all goes wrong because I'm so heavy. It just all the skis break away and they don't work very well. And sometimes that can be, it depends on what people are looking for. But if you're not putting enough counter rotational separation, and maybe as a big guy, you just can't afford to, otherwise the skis just don't work.
No, I think there is that, and I think that's something that probably should be taken into consideration. I wonder if it's something that, say, maybe I need to go and look at the Dutch videos from like Interski or something like that, because the Dutch as a populace generally tend to be a lot taller. I think they're the tallest nation in the world or something. So maybe there's a way to go and look at that. But I'm kind of 6'1", something like that, and I'm kind of, I don't know. I really feel that this is a thing. If you're a sort of a larger gentleman, I wonder also if it's taken into account with something like the PSIA, because the general populace tends to be a bit heavier over there, or a bit bigger. I think in my times that I've been in the US, everyone's kind of just a bit bigger built, which I think, maybe is reflected in how they ski. Don't know, maybe I need to go and check out those 2 videos from Interski and see if I can find them.
Well, I think there's also probably getting old as well. I'm probably older than your average guy, running these exams, and I probably got the agility of a battleship. My advanced years, kind of thing. So that doesn't help either.
Yeah, well, fair play for you for keeping at it. How are you doing with the exam road? So you said to me you're ISIA cert, but I guess you've got all the other bits and pieces apart from what in Basel would be Eurotest and something else.
Yeah. I mean, I did my level 3 or ISI stamp, 10 years ago now, and I was quite happy with that. I was doing everything I wanted to do, and it really wasn't up until about 4 or 5 years ago that I started race training. Not so much to get my level 4 award, but it was just because I felt a bit of a fraud with the kids I was putting into Super G courses and things like that. And I'm thinking I just haven't been in there. So did some race training and quite enjoyed that. And then thought, well, actually, with a bit of work, I could bang out that Euro test, and did one, 3-4 years ago, and came 72nd out of 100. So it wasn't, but managed to finish and stuff, and stuck with it for a while. But I think I'm 57 this year, so trying to pass the Euro test. I think the oldest to ever get it was probably 45 or 46, something like that. So it's a big ask the older you get.
Yeah, I can see that. I think it is important. I'm going to go and do that in Saas-Fee in the summer when I get some time, because we're doing more and more race coaching, and I kind of feel like I need to brush up on my GS skills, just to kind of the same thing really. It's just to kind of be able to practice what you preach in a way. It's nice to set, and it's nice to give all the advice that you kind of got, but actually, I'm also got a little plan to go and do do a couple of like masters races or something next year, just for fun, just to go and do something new and interesting, or just to keep the ski season interesting. Certainly, that's on the agenda. I'm going to find out where they are and then put them in my diary, make sure I don't kind of block myself off with work or whatever. Because there was a couple in Chatel this year. The British Masters, I think, was in Chatel. Which I could have gone, but I was working at the time, so I didn't get a chance to do it. But yeah, so cool. All right. I think what I'm going to do is knock it on the head there. Now, what I do normally, Scott, is I give everyone a chance to kind of promo their own thing. So, where can people find you, and where can people get in touch with you if they want to sort of ski with you, or do more, or find out more about some of the stuff that you've talked about?
Okay, yeah. Well, just the easiest thing is a website. We got a pretty comprehensive site at InsideOutSkiing, all one word, .com.
InsideOutSkiing.com. Cool.
Yeah, and and maybe in that same notion of promoting a little bit, because we work with quite strong recreational skiers, we also found over the years we're doing a lot of level 1 preparation. So I do quite a bit of that working with early stage skiers. So we've put about getting on for 50 now up through their level 1 through Basel and IAZ.
Really?
So in the summertime we run preparation courses.
I meant to ask you about that. So well, okay, this is good. There's another tangent then. So you're prepping people to go and take their Basel level 1 ski instructor. So they've reached a certain recreational skiing level.
Yeah.
And then they're looking for the next challenge, which will be an introductory ski instructor exam, I guess.
Yeah, it really came about. I mentioned Derek Chandler. We got chatting, and he was having to fail people at their level ones, and he was really frustrated because he said if it was just a little bit of training to tune them up, they would have stood a much better chance. And I'm like, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
So we. I think 7 years ago now we started like I call it an instructor fast track course where we do one Saturday a month over the summer for three sessions to kind of not a mock exam but just to kind of get into some of the terminology, do a little mock teaching session, but mainly on for personal performance, introduce them to the progression through from plow to parallel skiing, and then they can hit the ground running, and it's worked quite well, and there are people that are keen enthusiastic recreational skiers that generally don't have the thought isn't I want to be a career ski instructor, but they just want to get a bit better and maybe teach their friends or family. But off the back of that, we found a couple go on to get their level twos, and more than a few are on staff at Hemel, and it's nice. So we've developed a little training group for them, and we do a monthly session for professional development that people working towards their level 2 and level 3.
Yeah,
and that's something if any of your listeners are interested, that's running over the summer as well.
Oh, that's great. Well, also that's a way of giving something back to the slope, right? Because
yeah, absolutely, and for me, it was a lot of it was at like I met you at people that were working towards a level 3 and 4. You just meet people, whether it's training groups or Eurotest training or tech preparation, and you just get to know everybody. But that doesn't really happen at level 1 and 2, and so I was trying to really promote that at the Snow Center, and it's working out well.
Oh, mate, that's really, really great. That's really great. Cool. All right. Well, thank you for that, Scott. Thank you for taking the time to be interviewed. I really, really appreciate you giving up your time and giving us all this super stuff today. That's really cool of you.
Sorry, yeah, I know some of it was pretty boring and legal, but hopefully somebody gets some benefit out of it.
Yeah, cool. All right, fantastic.